Well, I think the president's made it very clear that he intends to take the government very aggressively to the left here, basically expanding its size dramatically, expanding its burden dramatically, expanding the tax burden, not for the purposes of reducing the deficit. Ironically, when Bill Clinton increased taxes, he used it to reduce the deficit, but the Obama proposal basically increases taxes in order to grow the size of the government, and it grows it so fast that it basically outpaces our ability to pay for it, in my opinion, and that's why we've got this looming issue, which is going to be very difficult for our children to deal with, which is that they're going to have a debt that far exceeds their capacity to pay it.
The president has again said that he will reduce the deficit by half during this first term as president.
Well, that's true. But it's not a real victory, because basically what he's doing is he's taking a debt and it's going up to 1.3 trillion. He's reducing it to 700 billion. So you're basically taking 4 steps backwards and 2 steps forwards. That means you're still going backwards, and that's the problem here.
Yeah, and there seems to be another problem as well, Senator, and that would be the percentage of growth in our economy. This is the president who, until 2 weeks ago, was talking with the direst of language about our economy, talking about catastrophe, disaster, and depression. And he projects, and his Office of Management and Budget project the GDP to be growing at over 3% by next year. That he also projects a 4% GDP growth rate in the year following. If those are realistic numbers, hallelujah for all of us, but they seem extraordinarily optimistic.
Well, they are the sunny side of a rosy scenario. Let's hope he's right. But if he is right, even if they hit those numbers, they're still going to be running deficits, according to CBO, that will range in the $1 trillion range. I mean, you just can't. The reason you can't close this down is because he's expanding the size of the government so quickly, the spending of the government so quickly. He openly admits, if you listen to his press conference last night, that he intends to increase spending in a variety of areas because he thinks government spending creates prosperity. Well, I happen to take the view the government spending doesn't really create prosperity unless it's restrained and affordable. And the problem, that's the difference of opinion here. We don't happen to think, people of my party, that you can spend this type of money, run up this type of debt, increase taxes this way, and expect the prosperity to follow. In fact, what follows probably is stagnation and a lot of pressure on our children to have a big debt that they probably can't afford to pay.
Well, Senator Gregg, when you put it in partisan terms like that, though, is your credibility diminished because under the Bush administration and the Republican Congress, when your party was in charge, admittedly there was a war and is a war in Afghanistan and Iraq, but the spending and the size of the government rose extraordinarily during the 8 years of the Bush administration.
And you're absolutely right, Lou, and I voted against almost all of it. But as a very practical matter, we were not good shepherds. We were not good stewards on the spending side of the ledger as a party when we had control of the government. But that doesn't mean that should be compounded this way, because if you take all the debt run up in this country between George Washington and George W. Bush, all of it, President Obama is suggesting doubling that in 5 years and tripling it in 10 years. So even though we probably weren't very good stewards, we weren't on the spending side of the ledger, what you're seeing here is an explosion in the size of the government as we have a presidency which really wants to move very aggressively in increasing the size of the government.
Senator Judd Gregg, we appreciate you being with us here.
Thank you, Lou.